I think there's this fine balance of like caring so much, like you want something, you have to give it your all, you have to commit everything to the process, but also there has to be a certain level of not giving a fuck.
Hey y'all, welcome back to the Struggle Climbing Show, or if you're new, because you just see that this is a Chris Sharma episode and you're like, ooh, I'm psyched on Chris, let me dip into this new podcast. Well, welcome to The Struggle. I'm Ryan. I'm just like a regular climber. I'm a weekend warrior and I love to connect with elite climbers as well as weekend warriors to figure out where we all struggle, what we learn from it, and how we break through in this sport that we love so much. And today we have got the GOAT, Mr. Chris Sharma. He's back on the show, so if you haven't heard our first conversation, you can dip back into the archives. But I reached out to Chris because we hadn't talked in a little bit, and since I'm a dad and he's like maybe going for the Olympics, and he's also climbing some project right now that could go up to 516, while being a very busy dad and professional and a guy in his 40s, I just wanted to dip into all of these concepts in more detail, and he was psyched to connect. And so here we are. We're chatting. And in this conversation, we cover all sorts of things. We talk about his family. In fact, his son makes a guest appearance in this podcast, how he's continuing to push the envelope in this busy season of life. We do touch on this new project that he's been working on. He spent some time on it this season with Maddie Hong. There's a couple little videos out there, but not a whole lot about it. And we really dive into the particulars of what could be the hardest route in the world, if/when it goes. And we also talk a lot about deep water soloing, a style of climbing that he's dedicated a lot of his most recent years, and also how he's been finding a lot of joy climbing moderate and easy routes out in Mallorca with regular climbers like you and me, people who attend one of these retreats that he does. And we talk about these retreats in this podcast here through altitude. So he and Magnus Midtbø welcome a group of climbers and they go out and they deep water solo and hang out and have dinners. And anyway, we dive into all of that in this one as well. And there's a couple spots open still. And so I give a little bit of information later in the show here about how, if you want to climb with Chris Sharma and Magnus Midtbø out in Mallorca this October and November, well, you're going to have to act quick because they always sell out, but you could grab yourself a final spot in that retreat. Holy smokes. All right, just a quick little update from me. I'm out in Squamish right now. So speaking of Chris Sharma, I just jogged over to Dreamcatcher out at the base of the Chief there. Obviously a very famous Chris Sharma first ascent, and maybe one of the most aesthetic lines I have ever witnessed in real life as a climber. I stood underneath it. It's so beautiful, and I'm just out here right now for the Arc'teryx Academy. Been climbing with a lot of their athletes. Been struggling, so much struggle on the granite out here. I'm not accustomed to granite climbing, you all, but I'm loving it. I'm learning. I'm trying hard. And fortunately, I still have a little bit of skin left. So I'm going to get out and do some single pitch and some multi-pitch. Lots of videos up on the Struggle Instagram and some really cool stuff coming on YouTube as well from this trip out here. And speaking of which, I should get after it. I should get back out to the blocks here. And I'm just going to leave you now with the one and only, the catcher of dreams, Chris Sharma. Just got back from a nice little trip, a little family road trip out west. We went out to International Climbers Festival in Lander and hit up Wild Iris.
Cool.
It was good. I'm sure you spent some time out there back in the day.
I did, yeah. I went there when I was 15 with Tommy Caldwell. It was like my first road trip, kind of from Utah, Colorado, and we went to Wild Iris, climb, throw the hula hand and stuff. So
sick.
Good memories for sure.
Get on all the classic Skinner routes and Piana routes out there.
Then I went back because throwing the hula hand starts off a boulder, and I went back several years later and I did like direct start like from the ground. But yeah, that rock is amazing. Some of the best limestone in the U.S. probably.
Dude, I didn't know that about. So is there a direct to throwing the hula hand? That does it starts up a boulder?
It starts off a boulder like the 14A, and then there's like I don't know what it is, like a V9 or a V10 boulder problem into that start, yeah.
Into like what appear to be like some of the most heinous kind of mono type moves that I've ever seen.
Yeah, no, it's cool. I don't know. I don't know if it gets 14B or whatever it gets, but yeah, it's cool actually, like that routes that have history in that way where, it was established by Todd Skinner and then being able to add on to it. And there's like this kind of collaborative element to it. it's pretty cool when that happens. There's a route that I put up called Golpe de Estado. So it's one of the first 15 Bs. Actually, it was only repeated by Endur. It was like his first 15B. I think it might actually be 15C. It'll be interesting to see how it pans out down the road. But anyways, it was envisioned by Stefan Globus. She put in a couple of bolts. Then Danny Andrade came and finished it as Estado Critico, which was like a 9A or something like that. And then I added the kind of direct start, which was like another 9A plus into it. But just cool, like 3 different kind of, whatever, legends of the sport from different periods collaborating, on one route, essentially. It's kind of neat when that happens.
That's really cool. I didn't know, because I know the route, but it's only you and Adam who have actually sent that.
It's interesting because it's on the same wall as La Rambla, as Sleeping Lion. It's like one of the most traveled most transited walls, in Tijuana, and everyone goes by it. But even all the top climbers, no one tries it. I feel like, I don't know why they don't. I feel like they're maybe a little bit intimidated. It has a couple of pretty reachy moves on it, but I think that, when Magos came and did Sleeping Lion, I was like, dude, you got to try Golpe de Estado. It literally, I did it in 2008 and Andre did it in 2010 and no one had done it since. And so, yeah, it'll be interesting to see where it pans out as.
Dude, that's nuts that it hasn't seen another ascent in 15 years. It's really interesting.
But it might also because it hasn't been tried really. But that's also kind of interesting. Why has it been tried? Like, it's a really good route, actually.
Well, there's more famous routes that are maybe kind of just immediately adjacent to it. But if the movement's good, if the quality's good, you would think that it sounds like I'm sure a fair share of people have been on it. I talked with Adam not too long ago, and we were talking about routes that are hard, don't see a whole lot of traffic, and like his boulder Terra Nova came up because he, did that ages ago, and I think he gave it like V16, but Will Bosey's been working on it. Not a lot of people have been working on it because it's just like really, really, really hard.
Well, it's also kind of obscure, right? Like that's it's far away. But the thing with Golpe de Estado, it's right in one of the most popular crags in the world, right? And it's super easy access. And it'd be interesting to see it's a really cool route. So I'd be curious it's kind of one of those forgotten routes in a way.
There's just not a lot of people in the world that climb at that grade, Chris. That's also the problem is like there's such a small pool of people who could climb. If you're saying maybe it's hard 15B, maybe it's 15C. I mean, now it's really narrowed down. So then it's like, okay, how do you get people out there? You're gonna have to entice them. You have to clip some swag at the chains or some money or something like that. Like,
I think that's actually a good idea. I thought about that. Some of the projects that I've worked on and off over the years, like, would be cool to, get some brand behind it, some cash purse or something, some sort of like ultimate rock climbing competition like that would be pretty cool.
I'm kind of into this now. Like put a bounty on the routes out there that either haven't been done or haven't seen repeats in a long time, and kind of bringing the competition element, because there's been this discussion, and you've been on both sides of this very recently, just not too long ago, entering the comp scene again and podiuming, and so you've got a pretty unique perspective on this. But there's been a lot of chatter in the climbing community about there's been a fork in the road, and there's rock climbing and there's competitive climbing, whereas maybe when we're looking back at early competition climbing, the routes that were set were far closer to, like in Snowbird or whatever, they're far closer to like what an actual kind of rock climb would be. Now there has been a bit of a split in styles, at least, and some crossover, no doubt. But I haven't heard anybody talking about like essentially making rock climbing competitive. I don't know. Does that take away the purity of it?
Well, probably a little bit, but I mean, whatever. That's the world we live in, I guess, right? You can't be like too high on your horse, right? And I think anytime there's an opportunity to give others an opportunity to kind of make climbing their profession, I mean, I feel like that's definitely something that is like part of my legacy, or the thing I want to like help other climbers in that realm, since I've kind of been through that whole process. It's not an easy thing to achieve, to turn climbing into your livelihood, right? And so, I don't know, I'm always thinking of different ideas of, ways to do something unique and cool. But I think it's interesting too, like that being said, and I'm a little bit surprised about with bouldering, because I think definitely on lead climbing, the style is different, mostly because of the types of holds, like the big volume holds. They end up being like mostly like sloper climbing, which on sport climbs, I think you very rarely get slopers on sport climbs. And that's the big difference. But of course, in bouldering, you have like all of this gymnastic parkour stuff. And I'm a little bit surprised that people haven't explored that in outdoor bouldering, because that seems like there's got to be a lot of, options or overlooked lines or stuff like that when it comes to run and jump, types of coordination problems. Like those have to be all over the place. And it doesn't seem like anybody has really sought that out. And I think that's an interesting conversation. We could probably spend like a whole hour on that, because I think there are a lot of climbers that feel a little bit like disenfranchised by that type of setting, because it doesn't even really feel like climbing at a certain point. You're like, well, this is like completely foreign. It's more like parkour. But I do think it would be interesting to see that explored on rock a little bit more, specifically in bouldering, because it could just lend itself more to that. If you think about too, like granite and sandstone, there's just a lot of potential with that type of stuff. Not necessarily that I'm inspired to do that myself, but yeah, like thinking about it back in the day, like Leo Holding, and of course like John Dawes back even farther. But there was like Leo's doing a lot of like modern types of boulder problems, even like on the LCAC, right? Like I think the Yosemite is a really great example of that crossover into comp setting, because there are like these flakes or features, and then there'll be these like super blank sections. And so, yeah, I think that's pretty interesting to see Leo Holding what he did on some of the boulders and like the cathedral boulders, and then even on some of the routes that he was doing where there's like these crazy sideways dynos, and you didn't see that on rock at all until some of that free climbing and on granite started taking place. But
yeah, the valley's interesting with that. I think you're right. Like it lends itself because of the lower angle on some of the climbs. Like I've seen videos of Carlo Traversi doing paddle dynos on boulders out there. And then you've got like when Tommy and Kevin did the Dawn Wall, Kevin did like a big kind of sideways dyno, whereas Tommy opted to like down climb and go around it. And so, yeah, there is something about probably the future of outdoor climbing will have some of these more competitive style elements to it, but we're not seeing it. We're seeing competitive climbers come outside and make pretty quick work of hard projects. When you think about Yanya or like Brooke Rabitou on Excalibur not too long ago. Toby was out in your neck of the woods, I think, working on some hard stuff not too long ago as well.
Yeah, I talked to him about that the other day. I saw him in Madrid at the World Cup, and we were thinking maybe meeting up at some point. He got so close to Perfectamundo. And of course, that's been one of my nemesis routes since I bolted it in, I don't know, it was 2008 or 2009. But yeah, it's interesting. I think ultimately it depends on like people's motivation, right? It really comes down to what you want to do. I know for myself, like if I'm excited about something, I'll do whatever it takes to make it happen. If I'm not, I just can't be bothered, right?
Yeah.
And so I think, it is really interesting to see more of the comp climbers coming out and, getting outside and bridging that gap. Seems like it's good for their soul,
Yeah, no doubt. Especially with how stressful the comp scene seems to be really, pretty stressful on these mostly younger climbers. You still got Adam showing up for some comps. You got Jakob and Alex. And then, of course, you, again, kind of dipping back into it. So there's still like some of the old guard in there showing the kids how it's done. But definitely a lot of pressure for those who are doing it like week in and week out, it seems like.
Yeah, it was cool last year. So I was actually on our first retreat that we did with altitude in Mallorca. And we crossed paths with Mejdi Schalk and his buddy Sam Richard that were trying Espontas.
Oh, nice.
And it was so cool because they were so fired up, and you could just see how much they were just so it was so refreshing for them. And they were having so much fun, I think, because, they were like free from the pressure of comps and everything. And it was super cool. Actually, we ended up taking this other spot. I climbed this route last year called Vision Quest.
Yeah.
And we went out there and we were just talking about the whole experience of deepwater soloing, actually how it's very similar to comp climbing in a sense, because when you go deepwater soloing, there's just all of this stuff that you need to do to prepare. You need to have dry clothes, you need to have dry chalk bag, there's all these kind of like logistics that you have to go through to get everything in order to be able to make a try. And of course you can't take. So if you slip off and make a mistake down low, then you're like, you got to start all from scratch. You got to swim back to the, maidling, get your stuff back dry, change all your gear out, then you probably have to traverse back over. And so you really want to make every try count, as much as possible. And so that feeling of like going out and you're like on the spot, like now's the time to perform. Like there's like no fuck ups allowed.
Right.
It's like, this is it. Like I gotta bring all of my energy to this one spot at this point. And there's this nervousness, you're like, gotta pee like every 3 times before you make it an attempt, because it's just like all of the nervousness around it. And I was telling them, I was like, it's kind of like, feels like when you're getting ready to go out and compete. And they were like, totally. And so I think that's also pretty interesting, that mental side of being able to, that transition, some of those mental aspects into rock climbing. Of course, there's different challenges on both ends. When you're on-sighting something, you only have one shot, you have to make it count. But it's also kind of easy in the sense that you give it that one try and it doesn't work out, move on to the next thing. Whereas red point climbing, sure, you have as many tries as you want. So that might mean tomorrow, or it might be in 5 years, or it might be never.
Right.
And so there's this uncertainty that you can kind of just like carry around as baggage, and can, of course, add to that mental side as well.
I can see that, and obviously I don't climb at the level that you and the guys that you were talking about. But you mentioned the altitude group that you were out there with when you ran into them, and the people who come and join these retreats. It's you and Magnus, and you guys are doing deepwater soloing. I'm assuming they represent different levels, like different ability levels. So just weekend warriors and amateur climbers and that kind of thing. And did you get a sense when you were spending time with them when they were on deepwater solo, like what the experience was for them and how that might translate to roped climbing they might do, or boulders that they might do just like back at a gym? Like what is it about that deepwater soloing experience or mentality that even for like the average climber, what do we get out of that?
Well, I think that the cool thing about deepwater soloing, but could be any type of climbing, is that whatever grade you're climbing at, there's always going to be someone, higher up and someone, that's climbing at a lower level. But ultimately, the experience is quite similar for everybody. When you're trying something that's kind of at your limit, you're stepping out of your comfort zone, you're not sure if you're going to be able to do it. I think even more so with deepwater soloing, because most people have never done that type of climbing. Yeah. So they are really stepping out of their comfort zone, which is super cool to kind of accompany them on that. So,
when they're out there, so I'm just like putting myself, because I've never done it, but I want to.
I don't know, but go downstairs. I don't know. Ask Mommy. Summertime,
dude. Tell me about it. It's like school starts for my kids in like a week and a half, and man, I'm ready.
Yeah, no,
it's great though. I've got a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old, so they'll probably be popping in here.
Yeah, same with me. Same with 7 and 9.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, dude, we're in it. These are good years though. These are like the fun years, I feel like.
For sure. Yeah, no, it's a fine balance. Even you want to make there somewhere amazing and memorable, But at some point, you just kind of like run out of steam. You're just like, oh man, like you're trying to do your day-to-day life while they're out of school. And
all right, y'all, just a quick second here to tell you how you can hang out with this legend that we're talking to right now, Chris Sharma, and that is on an incredible deep water soloing retreat in Mallorca with him and who else? Oh, just a guy by the name of Magnus Midtbø. What is going on here? You get to climb with these guys, hang with these guys, eat dinner with these guys. I can't even wrap my head around how cool this is. And I've talked to a bunch of climbers who have been on these retreats, and they've said it is absolute core memories, life-changing stuff. But what do you do when you're not climbing? Well, each day is capped off with a delicious, relaxed dinner prepared by a local chef and then accompanied by fantastic conversation amongst all of you new friends who are going to be hanging out in Mallorca with Chris Sharma, learning how to deep water solo, taking pictures, having conversations, asking all the questions you've ever wanted to ask of these guys. Altitude takes care of everything. The logistics are fully taken care of. All you have to do is show up with shoes and chalk and a huge smile on your face. If you want to learn more, pop over to altitudeclimbing.com/events. I'm going to put that link right down there in the show notes for you. There's only a couple spots left on this Mallorca retreat, so hit that link to learn more. This episode's brought to you by Rungni. Y'all know Rungni. It's Magnus Midtbø's company. I love every single thing they make. Let me highlight a few of my favorite products right now. First of all, the harness pants. Oh my gosh, you probably heard me talk about these pants like for the past year. They are durable, they are stretchy, they are feather light, and they look fantastic. And now, oh man, I'm really psyched. They just launched a new version of the harness pants. It's like an offshoot. It's the harness utility pants. More pockets, elastic waistband for the perfect fit, and also improved sizing. So whether you're rubbing up against rock or trekking through the forest, these pants are tough, they're durable, and they are built to withstand whatever you throw at them. And I also want to highlight Magdust Super Dry. This is a new chalk that they just came out with. Super dry formula. If you've got sweaty hands, or if you're like me, you're spending a lot of time in the gym right now, this stuff will keep your hands sticky on rock or plastic. I love all of it. You can use code STRUGGLE and get 10% off pretty much everything over at Rungni. Let's go. This gives us an opportunity to talk about that for a second. I do want to loop back to the deep water solo stuff, but just because we're in dad zone right now, and a lot of people wrote in. I just put a quick heads up, like, hey, I'm talking to Chris, and a lot of people wrote in questions. A lot of the questions that I got were kind of about that juggle of how can you be present and be like a good dad, and you got to work and be a good husband, but also, you know, you're trying to perform at the absolute highest level, and you have been for decades. And
ask mommy to help you. You gotta ask mommy. I'm busy, dude. Ask mommy to help you, okay? Ask mommy to help you. They're downstairs, right in the entrance.
Did you hide his goggles?
I don't know where they are, where his goggles are.
They never know where it is. It's like literally in front of them, and they never know where it is. It's great. It's like, where's my backpack?
Yeah, man, it's not easy. I mean, I am in the unique, situation that climbing is still like my job,
Right.
And so I have a much easier time prioritizing climbing because I climb during the weekdays. That's like one of the big differences that most dads or moms that are juggling parenthood and climbing. Most people are working during the week, and the weekend is their time for climbing, and that's overlapping with family time as well. And for me, like what I've done over the last, number of years is basically I climb, Monday through Friday most of the time throughout the year. So once my kids are back in school, there's a lot of time during the day where I have to, bomb out to wherever I'm going climbing, and that's basically what I do. I'll do 2 or 3 day trips a week to wherever I'm projecting. And so, yeah, that's definitely changed my approach. Like as far as doing climbing trips, I very rarely take climbing trips, right, because that is like a bigger impact on the whole family dynamic. Whereas I can go 2 or 3 times a week, every week, and it's not like a big impact on the family life. But it certainly is, man. It's a challenge to juggle everything. But I think I feel like I'm still improving in certain ways. But a lot of it just comes down to when you have less time, you appreciate things a lot more. And back in the day when I just had limitless time to go climbing, go wherever I want, you don't appreciate it as much. And now that things are much more limited, then you value it a lot. And so, yeah, it's just like it's my kind of sacred time for myself. But still, it's easy when life kind of piles things up on top of each other, and your climbing priorities can get pushed down the totem pole, and suddenly a few weeks have gone by and then you're like off the wagon. And so it very much is like a continual process of like, you know, getting in shape and kind of falling a little bit out of shape. And I guess it's always been like that to a certain extent, but more so now. I also appreciate just the importance of like being consistent, because in the past I had kind of enough natural ability where I could just basically be off the couch most of the time and tap into like my highest level. And these days, you know, I'm 44, and so I have to be just more consistent in my climbing. And so, and also in that sense, it's very satisfying to like, it's very grounding to have that routine, you know, throughout the week, throughout the month, throughout the years. That's like climbing is this baseline for me that like, you know, that grounds me throughout the rest of my life.
Do you find with the consistency, and I feel you, like it's really hard sometimes to fit things in, even if it is your job, but with the consistency there, and I think one only gets better and better technically as a climber. And so, as you said, like you're still improving technically, and I love watching, you know, climbers who are a little bit older, more in my, you know, I'm in my 40s as well, but climbers in their 50s and 60s that are just technical masters the way they move over rock. So that's to our advantage because we can keep getting better in that sense. But there does seem to be like diminishing returns on things like strength or fitness, but you're continuing to perform like at the highest level. So maybe you figured something out that I haven't yet, but what are you doing? Like, what have you found yourself needing to do, or what's working for you to keep that fitness and that strength up?
Yeah, I think it's the consistency more than anything that I could say that is like kind of like allowed my longevity. These days, it's just about being very consistent. You know, the classic struggle is power versus endurance, you know? And it's like I did a bunch of route climbing the week before, then I took some days off, and then I had some great bouldering sessions, and then I went route climbing today, and I just felt so pumped. And it's like it's always a little bit weighted on one side or the other, right? And how do you harness both of those things simultaneously? And it's like, I think it's one of the biggest challenges in climbing. And I think it's a really interesting space to explore. You know, for me, I think there are certain boulders that I'm excited to still go and try, but as you said, like for like pure explosive power, maybe there are like some limitations. But the cool thing in sport climbing is that, you know, you could take a 515 and add a V11 boulder probably on top of it, or and suddenly you have, you know, something that's like a whole next step, and you're not actually increasing the actual, you know, explosiveness of the moves that much. And so I think there's still a huge amount of progression in sport climbing, which I think is really cool and really exciting. You know, actually, I have this photo. I don't know if it allows me to flip the screen right here while we're talking. Can it?
Maybe. You try.
I have a photo that somebody gave me for my birthday right here. It doesn't look like it.
Nah.
It flips it. Anyways, this is this route that I've been trying.
Wicked.
And it's like 70, 60 meters, like this steep.
I saw you post, or was it, who was out there with you shooting that? Somebody posted a little clip of it.
Yeah, I've been climbing out there. I climbed a lot out with Matty Hong this year on it.
Yeah.
And it's one of the coolest projects I've ever tried. The line that we're trying right now is between 9B plus, 9C.
Wow.
But there's also like an extension to it, and there's even a lower start that you could start even lower, which could potentially make it like a 10B or something like that. Like five. It's literally 516, like a tangible 516 that exists, that's doable, and it all comes down to that. You're like, all right, here's a 15C. Let's add another V13 boulder on top of that, and suddenly you have like the next level, right? And so it's comes down to finding those routes. But as far as like human potential, I feel like there's a lot to continue to explore with that, I think. I mean, it's interesting, bouldering, I feel there has been a lot of progression recently, you know. I mean, aside from the grades, because some of that seems like it's still being figured out. Seems like I'm not like fully in the loop, but it seems like there's more V17s than there are V16s.
Right. A lot now.
But it's neat to see the boulders that are like 6, 7 moves max, right? That's always kind of, for me, exemplified like a pure boulder. When you start having 20 plus moves boulder problem, it really is more like a route in that sense. You know, it's more about an endurance challenge. And so it's not the same.
Sure.
Not the same thing really, but it's cool. It's like whatever floats your boat, right? Like whatever you're psyched on. And
well, how psyched are you on this cave that you're in there?
super psyched. Yeah, you know, it's interesting. What I was going to say, a lot of it comes down to what do you have, you know, at your disposal, right? What projects do you have around that you can try? And that's oftentimes what you have to kind of like base your projects around. I think that's one of the reasons why bouldering has become so popular, because there's oftentimes just more options of smaller rocks available a lot of the times. In Spain, it's almost the other way around, though. You have more cliffs than boulders. It's funny.
So this cave that you're in, it looks like crazy steep. Do you have a sense for how steep that wall is?
Yeah, it's probably like about 50 to 60 degrees overhanging.
Wow.
And I've enjoyed it a lot. So I bolted this line a few years ago in the summertime. It's something I'd always looked at and always been, you know, kind of intrigued by. Of course, I've got like multiple balls in the air all the time. But I always wanted to go back and actually, you know, I bolted it, I did the moves, but I never like put time into it. I was working on LeBlanc and Perfectamundos a lot over the last couple of years. And I mean, for me, I'm just guided by my sensations about what feels good, especially with these routes that I've tried for so many different years. I really want to come with a fresh perspective every time. And, you know, you want to approach something, you see it and you get inspired, right? That's the telltale sign. Like that's how it all comes together. You need to be inspired to bring something like that to life.
Absolutely.
And obviously when you start going through that whole process of failing and, you know, trying over and over again, it can get frustrating and you can lose some of that inspiration. But for me, like the year before, I was able to keep kind of progressing. Felt like I had these like micro progressions every time I went out, and it just kept the ball rolling as far as like, it kept me inspired. It somehow felt like it continued to be fresh and, you know, genuine in that sense. It's not like I'm doing this because I told myself 10 years ago that I want to do it. It's more like, no, I'm here in the present moment and I still want to do this. You have to kind of reinvent your psyche every time you go out climbing.
Hell yeah.
And I think that's really important. And so it kept going in that direction. So it was cool. I'm just going to keep going, keep following that. And that's how I've always climbed. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm still so psyched on climbing, is that I've never forced myself into this position where I just get sick of it. But so knowing when to pull back is important. And I had 2 days on LeBlanc in Oleana where it was hard. Like the holds felt small and sharp, and I just was like, felt like I was forcing it. And I was just like, all right, time to change, shift gears, do something else. And that's when I started trying this route in Santa Ana with Maddie Hong. And it was such a great antidote to that, because it was, you know, Oleana, I'd been there so many times over so many years. It's literally, the LeBlanc is right next to La Dura. So it just feels like, oh, here I am again, another time. You're just like repeating the same thing. And being at Santa Ana is like a completely new place, a new crag, new location, new route. So like everything is fresh, and kind of getting into that vibe of like, you know, discovering something that whole process of like when you first are like deciphering the movements, and you're not even thinking about anything, you're just trying to unlocking the sequences, and just the very playful, joyful part of climbing. It's probably the funnest part compared to when you're actually trying to like seal the deal, and it feels like it's just hard work, right? And so, yeah, it was on top of that, I had a great partner with Maddie to just like work on that together, and yeah, just turned into such a great season. Of course, it didn't end with Ascend, but it won't be the first or the last, that's for sure, in that way. But definitely we progressed a lot, and ultimately that's kind of like, that's the goal, is to feel like you're progressing. And one of the really cool things compared to LeBlanc, which is like a face climb, super bouldery, super small holds. Santa Ana, it's this steep. The climbing is very physical, and the holds, and there's a couple of V13 sequences on the route, but still the climbing is very physical. It's like very full body. It's very like almost like cardio, very athletics. And so just like it's very satisfying feel when we go out there and climb. Actually felt like we got a lot of climbing in. Sometimes when you're going to go try a project and you're just like figuring out beta, hanging on the bolts, you get to the end of the day, you're like, I don't think I even really linked that much. I didn't really climb that much, actually. It was more just like, figuring stuff out. And so we had a great season. Every time we went out, it felt like we got a lot of climbing in, and so it was just very satisfying. And yeah, particularly that style of climbing is something that's that steep. It's very physical. It's almost more like, you're working, your arms and your shoulders and your core, and it feels like I don't have any experience with this actually, but it's more like a HIIT workout or something. You're just like this full body exercise, and so like your endorphins and everything is just very satisfying, and it was just very refreshing to climb on like nice, relatively like good holds versus like these gnarly, sharp, tweaky holds. And so it's still fun. It's fun to be able to do both, but ultimately you have to be able to like mix it up, and like you have to know, of course, there's like a time when you have to like bear down and do the hard work, but you also need to know when it's time to switch gears. And it's all about being able to read your motivation, how you're feeling, and that's really the guide. It feels a little bit superficial to base it on how much fun am I having, because at a certain point, to achieve your highest levels, it's not going to be fun. It's going to be hard work. But I think it's more like, am I feeling, it's more inspiration, I think, is a better word to describe it, because, you have to see it and be like, wow, like that's amazing. I need to get better so that I can climb this one day. And if you're missing that, then like you're screwed. So you're better off switching gears, trying something else, mixing it up, whether that's a different style of climbing, or it could also be taking a break completely from climbing for, a week or two or whatever you need. Ultimately, I've never forced myself to go climb. And that's part of what I would, also attribute to my longevity. It's just, climbing is this activity that's accompanied me through life, but it's always been a choice to go do it rather than this kind of blind, unquestioned thing, like this is what I do. No, it's like it has to come from the heart every time you do it. Otherwise, you're definitely not going to achieve the results that you're looking for anyways.
This episode is brought to you by our friends over at Scarpa, the best dang climbing and approach shoes in the entire game. And by the way, they're Hook and Struggle listeners up with a really cool gift. I'm going to tell you about that in a second. But first, I want to tell you about this article that just came out in Climbing Magazine, where they named their top shoes of 2025. And what they selected as their best training shoe is one of my personal favorite shoes, and that's the Veloce L, the lace-ups. And I'm going to quote this article here. They say, "We love the Veloce L for everything from parkoury slab to cave bouldering to long overhanging 512, 513 lead routes. And we found them to be consistently responsive, comfy, and unshakable. And I got to tell you, that's been my experience too. I use them on the board, I use them on the slabs, and I've used them on long, overhung, pumpy climbs out here at the Red. The Veloce L's are my go-to everything shoe, and Scarpa's hooking you up right now. If you buy yourself a new pair of climbing shoes, approach shoes, or trail runners, and you use code STRUGGLE at checkout, not only does it help the show, which I really appreciate, but if you live in the US, you're going to get yourself a free gift with that purchase while supplies last, and that is a 5-panel hat. It's a customized hat with a Struggle logo, a Scarpa logo. It's lightweight. It's going to keep the sun off your face at the crag there. Or if you're just having a bad hair day, like I am pretty much every day, you can toss on this free hat. It's free. You get it for free. If you live in the US and you buy yourself a pair of shoes, use code STRUGGLE at checkout to score that free hat. That link's right there in your show notes. I love you.
All right, y'all. Just want to take a quick second here to tell you how I'm staying healthy and taking care of myself as I'm now pushing my body to the hardest limits I've ever pushed it as a rock climber. And the way that I'm fueling these gains that I'm working so hard to get is with Fizzy Vantage Nutrition. Y'all know Fizzy Vantage. They've been a sponsor of the show since the very first episode, and I've been a paying customer of Fizzy Vantage since long before there was ever a podcast. And why is that, Ryan? Why am I buying Fizzy Vantage products? Well, it's because they work. They're designed by climbers for climbers to help us climb our best. Every single day, I'm taking their supercharged collagen before I do like a little light fingerboard workout, like the Abra hangs that I've talked about here on this show, or before I go climbing or go to the gym. And I'm also fueling up either before or after a workout with one of their protein powders. It's like my sweet treat that I have. And the most important thing, as I mentioned, is that it works. Most coaches and doctors and dietitians are going to tell you that you should probably take in about 1 gram of protein per body weight every single day if you're an athlete and you're trying to fuel your gains. So for me, 155 grams of protein is a lot of protein in a day. And I love a whole foods diet, but I have to supplement in order to hit that goal. And I do it by using Fizzy Vantage. Hit that link right there in your show notes and you'll get 15% off pretty much everything over at the Fizzy Vantage store, or use code STRUGGLE15 at checkout to get that discount, and let's get after it. Well, God, I really, really appreciate the perspective. It really resonates for me, Chris, I got to say, because I'm kind of coming off of a big season where I was very, very kind of obsessed with punching into a new grade. And I ended up getting very inspired by the route it was a route at the Red River Gorge. And so ultimately the psych was around the route, but I had this kind of goal to climb my first 13A. And it was kind of like, after a while, it was hanging above my head, and I did it and I was like super psyched, but it's not like I did it and felt like I was a different person. And it's not like my kids, like all of a sudden, you know, gave me more respect or anything. That, you know, I was just like the same guy I've always been. And now I'm trying to figure out like, oh, what's my next thing? And so I'm setting like kind of a grade for a boulder that I want to climb. And what I'm discovering in this is that in one sense, it does motivate me, because I'm like, okay, I have a goal and I'm going to work towards a goal, and that helps me to structure training and all that. But I wouldn't say I'm letting inspiration be my guide. And I really liked your perspective there, which is like, you got to kind of find the routes that light this like joy and this fire and this stoke inside of you. And then if you are maybe not getting progress on it, or it's just not a great experience anymore, you can just shift to the next one that inspires you. And I wonder, like, just kind of putting that same scenario back on you, how much you've ever felt like obligated or motivated by a grade. If this thing that you were climbing with Maddie was 9A instead of 9C, would it be as fun or as exciting? Or does grade and the challenge of the grade kind of come into play in that stoke level?
I think it does come into play. You know, like ultimately you want to feel like we're progressing. I think that's a really important part of the whole journey climbing. You want to feel like you're working towards something, like you're getting better. I think it is important to have goals. I mean, I would love to climb a 9C, you know, and finding that one, you know, I do think LeBlanc might be 9C, but it also might not be the greatest style for me. This one that we've been trying with Maddie, I think it maybe is a better style for me. And so, yeah, it's interesting in that sense. So this route in particular in Santa Ana is very easy to be excited about. It's fresh, it's new. The tricky ones are like Perfecto Mundo and LeBlanc. I can try Perfecto Mundo for over 16 years.
Yeah.
And off and on, not all the time. And I mean, if I tried it all the time, I would probably be like have quit climbing by now. But it's something that I keep holding on to. It's something that I would love to do. I feel like it's like I've invested a lot of time, and it's still something that like is meaningful to me. And so, as I said, like it has to make sense in the moment. Like, I don't know, comes to my mind like someone goes to college and they're 18 years old and they have to pick a major, and like they're like 18, like how are they supposed to know what they want to do for the rest of their lives, right? And by the time they get, halfway through, they might be like, why am I even doing this, right? And I think especially with those projects, it's like you have to still be inspired. And so I don't know, it's not easy. And I think a number of different times in my career and different experiences, projecting routes where you are forced with actual failure, having to give up on something that you've put a lot of time in, can be like hard things to deal with, but then ultimately like are liberating. Because as you said, you did your 513, but then like, everything is still basically the same. And I think we hold those goals over ourselves, like we need to do this or not too, right? Like maybe we think we do, but then you're like, well, and so for me with Perfecto Mundo or Le Blonde, like I do hold on to that idea of wanting to do it, but I'm also very open to, if it's not, then I don't want to force something that's just not the right thing. That would be like kind of squandering my time right now by trying to like live in the past. You have to be inspired in the moment for doing that. Otherwise, good luck, right? Like climbing your hardest route ever. But I think you need, that whole process is so interesting because it does force us to kind of relinquish a lot and almost like surrender, right? And that oftentimes is like when those magic moments will unlock, and and it's totally cliche, but it's like the classic last day, last try, right? Of course, it's always last day, last try. You always send it on your last try.
Right.
But there's often something to that point when you're just like you let it go. You accept the failure, and then you're just like, well, screw it. I'm just going to go have fun climbing. And then you're just enjoying the climbing. You're just fully connected. There's no separation between ourselves and the route. And then that's like that magic moment that we are chasing throughout, our lives, right? That happens from time to time. And, it happened for me on this revision quest last December. And I was totally classic. I had tried it 2 times that same day and gotten super close. I was already tired. The water was cold. I was kind of exhausted, but I was just like, I was like, that was my last go of the year. Like, it's done. I gave it my all, made peace with that. And then I was like, oh, but we still got some time here before we have to catch our flight. Like, I'm just going to go down and, just get back on it for old time's sake, And then, I didn't care. I was just climbing. I was enjoying this route that was one of the most amazing routes that I've ever tried. And then I found myself at the crux drive-by dyno at the top, and instead of hesitating, I just executed, because there was I didn't care in the same way. And so it's hard to replicate that. But I do think as we get older, it becomes easier in the sense that just care a little bit less. I think there's this fine balance of like caring so much, like you want something, you have to give it your all, you have to commit everything to the process, but also there has to be a certain level of not giving a fuck as well, to have the freedom to actually execute in those moments. And otherwise you get locked up and you follow that same move over and over again. And when it's just like a mental thing, and I do find like as I get older, you just like, I'm doing this because I love it, because it makes me feel alive. It's my way of tapping into like a higher level of being, but you get less attached to the outcome. It's more about just like tapping into that state of being. And so I think that's an interesting kind of observation as far as like as we get older in climbing, there are certain things that are getting harder, but there's other things that get easier. Whereas when you're younger, you want to like prove yourself or something, you feel like you have, the weight of the world on your shoulders. You need to like, and then after you're like, whatever, like no one's going to really care if I do this or not. I'm just here because I want to be here. And so it can be very pure in that sense. And yeah, you can cut through a lot of that bullshit, forgive my language, but just like, that we go through so much of that, like hemming and hawing and, kind of mental struggle through that process. You're just like, I'm here, feel good. I'm so fortunate to get to be out here climbing today. Like, I've managed to get away. Like I'm at this beautiful day, beautiful crag, like, let's go. And it might not even be the best conditions, but here we are, let's make the most of it. And it's just a totally different attitude than, I think when you're a bit younger, I guess.
Yeah. Every attempt when you're younger, every project seems like there's just so much riding on it. And I think also perspective in age comes because we have other things that ultimately move up in the hierarchy of importance, and like our kids or our family or careers or whatever, or tend to replace in importance any singular send. But man, just really wise words and perspective from you there about just the whole experience of climbing. I really appreciate that.
I just wanted to just go back one step because I did talk about, climbing as a livelihood and all of that stuff. Climbing as a profession and wanting to help others along that path, and how that is a challenge. When climbing is your job, that can actually really mess with your inspiration for climbing because there's all of these things mixed into it. And I think one of the things that's helped me a lot too is, even though it's taken a lot of time away from me, but starting Sharma Climbing and the gym company that we have here in Spain, it's like creating kind of something beyond just my livelihood as a sponsored climber. I think that I've seen that kind of ruin people's relationship with climbing. And so having that just kind of I feel a little bit freer to just go, and maybe also just not feeling like I have much to prove or something. But so finding that balance is not easy. It's a challenging path. It's a dream job to become a pro climber, but then once you get there, suddenly there's a lot of pressure and it can affect your relationship with it, and not always in a positive way. And so I think it's probably a lot of comparison similar to artists or musicians. It's probably the dream of any artist to be able to sell their work and make a living doing it. But suddenly it's not you just going into your studio and getting inspired and creating something. It's like you have to do this to produce this product, to sell it. And that can really change the nature of the whole process, right? And so trying to find a way to get into that space where it does feel free, where you feel like you're just doing your thing because this is what you do, this is what you love, this is how you express yourself and kind of express the kind of best version of yourself. I don't know. But anyways, just wanted to add that little anecdote about things.
It is interesting because I talk with a lot of professional climbers on this show, but I also talk with weekend warriors and amateur climbers of which I fit into. And there's pressure to do the thing kind of regardless. Like we'll put it on ourselves, and it might be external pressures because you've got bills to pay, or it might be internal pressures because your ego's wrapped up in it. But no matter what, there's going to be pressure if we care about the thing. And your point earlier about just trying to find the gratitude and the perspective when you get out to alleviate some of that pressure, I think can be great. I mean, when I ultimately sent my big project that was over a year in the making, it was my first Red Point go of the season, and I tied in and I was just like, I'm just going to see where my fitness is at. Like it wasn't, I took the pressure off because I didn't think I was in a place where I could send. And then all of a sudden I sent. And so it's hard to manufacture that, but when it does happen, it does seem to help with the flow, like you on Vision Quest.
Yeah. It's interesting because we should care about what we do deeply, and to do something at our highest level, it needs to mean something for us, right? And so it's important to have that, and it's also important to have a lighthearted side of where you're just like, yeah, whatever, like, also be able to just enjoy and have fun, right? So be able to kind of like hold both of those things simultaneously is really, it's like being able to have power and endurance at the same time.
It's a unicorn.
And for me, going to Mallorca and like climbing on these blank canvases of rock that don't even have any established lines, you're just climbing, up this beautiful rock face is the ultimate expression of that. And it's one of the reasons why with altitude and with Magnus, it's so cool to be able to share that side of climbing, get people tapped into that just like very abstract, free side of climbing, because I think it is like the natural tendency to want to like go for the next grade. And, as climbing is so gym centric these days, yeah, we lose a little bit of touch of that connection with nature. And I think having that opportunity to like instill that into people is really gratifying for me.
I'm going to put a link in the show notes for anybody who wants to check this out, because you can just like literally go out and climb with Chris and Magnus, which seems crazy. But when you're out there, you're not pushing the limit. You're out there helping others maybe to push their limit or just to have a good experience.
Well, sometimes I am like, I like to, whenever I get a little window to go climb and try something hard, like I'm all about taking that opportunity. So I am like, it's a great opportunity for me to go climb too, actually, and which is cool. I think people get a kick out of that as well. When I go out and I'll try a project, when we're at a spot where there's something I want to try.
I'm sure for those who are fortunate enough to take this trip to be able to watch you push yourself at the top end, as I got a little, when we met up at the Red River Gorge for Rocktoberfest a couple of years ago, I saw you back on Golden Ticket, like really trying hard and like ripping those like huge moves. And it was really cool to see. But even when you're climbing stuff that's more chill, because I'm always wrestling with this, like, like I'm going out to the Red tomorrow and I'm like, okay, am I going to try something hard, or am I just going to get on some things and like focus on the movement and the experience? And like, what's your philosophy on that when you go out, when you're getting on things that are more chill for you? Are you just climbing for fun, or are you still thinking about how to technically do it the best you can, rather than just trying to push yourself at the limit all the time?
Well, so the climbing in Mallorca, the rock, of course, doing it over the Mediterranean is the funnest climbing experience I've ever known in climbing. And that's why I keep doing it over and over and over again. And I guess it gets repetitive when people see, oh, Chris did another hard deep water solo, but it's just so good. It never gets old. And oftentimes, on many occasions, I've kind of guided groups of friends that come out from my core group of friends from Santa Cruz often come out, and I'll take them on these tours and show them around some of the classics. And it's so much fun because I literally will be climbing side by side. And same with on these trips with altitude, climbing side by side with people, kind of pointing, because people are very much out of their comfort zone when they're climbing over water. They've never done it before. And so it helps a lot to have someone there kind of just like guiding you along. And the typical climbing scenario is like the guide or someone is down below, maybe shouting some tips, from down below. But when we're deep water soloing, I'm actually like climbing literally right alongside you. And be like, hey, put your foot there, put your hand right here. I'll be like chalking and like tapping, pointing to the holds like as we go. And I get such a kick out of that because I've done this so many times. I've been there so many times, but it still gives me so much joy. But to see people experience that for the first time, see their world get rocked it's so cool to see that and help facilitate that for them. And I think it really becomes like a one-of-a-kind experience that they have this like kind of like eye-popping experience of like being like out of their comfort zone. But not only that, like climbing literally together side by side with me. And I'm like pointing them, kind of like guiding them through these things. And so it's cool to kind of like help facilitate that type of experience for them. And
beautiful.
And to see them kind of get it, because a lot of times there is this gap between what you see on the movies of deepwater soloing, but most people don't have a firsthand experience of what that's actually like. And I think for me, there's this need to kind of share with other people to help them understand what I'm doing. I've spent the last 20 years of my life over in Spain doing this because it's so amazing, but I still feel like a lot of people might not totally get why I did that. And then you get them into that situation where they're like hanging, on this overhang in the Mediterranean, and the waves are crashing below them, and they're like, they get it immediately. And so it's really cool to kind of like transmit that to them, like, personally. And it's something I think that's really cool too, because these days so much of the content, so much of everything's online, right? And people on YouTube and doing this and that, or sharing on Instagram or whatever, but having that opportunity to connect, face to face, like in the flesh, and help take them and have this like personal experience, I think is so satisfying for them, but also very rewarding for me as far as like someone that is like, I've dedicated my life to sharing my passion for climbing with others. And it's strangely enough, a new medium to do it in person, because so much of it takes place virtually most of the time these days.
I love it, dude. What a cool experience. When you're climbing up next to people out there, like, does anybody get freaked out or pumped and just like try to grab onto you? Like, take me down.
Well, sometimes I will, like, I'll like, yeah, grab me, give me your hand, and like, I'll like help them through a section. But
I love it.
But yeah, I mean, we've got a great team. My good friend Sebastian, his company Rock and Water, has helped us kind of like bring these retreats to life as well. And just having all of the safety and everything set up, I think is really important, because I mean it can be serious for sure. I don't recommend most people to just go out on their own and start deep water soloing, because you could get yourself into some deep water, hot water. I don't know. I don't know what the what the expression is, but you could get yourself in trouble.
Yeah, it's already
easily. So it's good to be like that. We have that all in place, and so in a safe environment, giving people opportunity to experience that kind of, it's extreme. It's more extreme than most types of climbing. So it's cool to give people a little taste of that.
Oh man, I bet you feel very alive after a day out there. Just so good to reconnect with you as always. I know you got to get going, but this has been a joy. I just always really appreciate your perspective on the sport and climbing and the community in general. And have an awesome summer. Good luck with getting those kids back to school.
Thanks, man. Great to see you, dude. Take care.
All right, that wraps things up with a true ledge, Chris Sharma. Chris, thanks so much for hanging out again, man. I really appreciate it. I always get so much out of our conversations. I come into it and I'm like, okay, here are the things we're going to talk about. And then it inevitably takes like a hard left turn, and we just roll with it. And I learned so much from this conversation, just his perspective, the wisdom over the years, from being super performance focused to super experience and like sensations focused, and now everything in between, and being able to toggle between all of that. I loved it. I hope you did too. And by the way, the conversation continues. We've got a bonus episode over on Patreon or for Apple subscribers. And in it, Chris answers some listener questions. Patrons get to send in questions for Chris. So we asked some questions, and then we also just kind of followed our own train of thought. And he talks about if he's really serious about going for the Olympics and what that might take. He talks about a little bit of history and kind of opines, if you will, on like what would happen if Wolfgang Gulich or Ben Moon were at their prime today. Like, how would they be performing if they were at their physical prime? Then we kind of keep that train of thought going. We talk about who would be most likely now to push the next grade. Like, I'm talking like V18 or 516. Chris Sharma, I will keep in that category. But he also talks about what might happen to this sport as the climbs get harder, and also as the sport gets more mainstream.
You can get instant access to all of that right now at zero cost, actually, with a free trial over at patreon.com/thestruggleclimbing-show, or right there in your Apple Podcast player if you are an iPhone person. And you're also going to get instant access to more than 100 hours of other bonus content featuring the best of the best. I'm talking about Adam Ondra, Chris Sharma, Nina Williams, Alex Honnold, Magnus Midtbø, and so many more athletes and coaches that have been on the show here. Plus, pro clinics on stronger fingers with Dr. Tyler Nelson, advanced bouldering with Allison Vest, moonboard with Ravioli Biceps, performance hacks with Hazel Finley, and so many more. It's all there for just a few bucks a month, or actually zero cost right now with that free trial, so you can try it before you buy it. Although, honestly, your support as patrons and subscribers is really what helps to keep this thing going. So if you got a few bucks, I certainly would appreciate your help as I'm jamming away here in the podcast/utility closet. Thank you. I love you. Big thanks and appreciation to all of our show sponsors who have brought you this episode here at zero cost. Way to go. You can check your show notes for links and special discounts from those guys that are only available to Struggle listeners, and there's some great discounts there, so check them all out. Actually, you can see all of the show's brand sponsors and special deals by popping over to thestruggleclimbingshow.com/deals. Hey, did you know that The Struggle is carbon neutral in partnership with the Honnold Foundation? Well, you do now, and it feels pretty good for me to write that check every month. They're doing such amazing work to bring clean energy to communities around the world. Y'all can get inspired and learn more about their amazing work over at honnoldfoundation.org, and toss them some love if you can. They're doing awesome stuff. And lastly, The Struggle is a proud member of the Plugtone Audio Collective, a diverse group of the best, most impactful podcasts in the outdoor industry. The show is produced and hosted by me, Ryan Devlin, and edited by the wonderful Glenn Walker. All right, that clips the anchors on this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in and supporting the show. If you want to do something that helps me out for zero cost, you could rate and review the show wherever you listen, or just share this with one of your climbing friends or the gym that you climb at. It really helps to get the word out there. I appreciate it. I hope your training and climbing are going great, and if you are struggling like me, well, just remember the struggle makes us stronger.